Okay, numb dick or genitalia, because women can get pins and needles and numbness as well in there, undercarriage as it were. So why do we get this? Well, the most common reason is that men have a nerve called the pudendal nerve that can be quite exposed at the base of the penis, and if that's pressed upon for any amount of time, it can start to give you that sensation of starting with pins and needles, but it can go all the way through the spectrum to like full-on numbness. Now, just so we're all really clear, for me, if you're, say, cycling for 2-3 hours and you're experiencing a bit of tingling or a bit of numbness, and you get out the saddle or you get off the bike and that's gone within seconds or minutes, that's generally not a problem if you're all right with it, okay? But if you're stopping a ride and you're still numb in the bed at night or the next day and you're getting back onto the bike with numbness, that is not a good place to be and can end up with serious implications for your nerve and genital health. What are the easy fixes of this? Well, first and foremost is, as per usual, start with your saddle position. One of the most common reasons to get a numb penis or genitalia is the nose of the saddle will be up, and therefore your pelvis will rock into the front of it, increasing the pressure on the base of the penis or your female genitalia, and then causing that neuropraxia is what we call it, where the nerve's pushed upon, it gets squeezed upon the pressure, and the nerve messages don't get basically sent through. So you start to get pins and needles or then numbness. Now, once you've made sure that your saddle position is optimal and correct, so not nose up, some people still suffer with this, but there's some really easy solutions. So I'm going to dive down here. First and foremost was gap saddles were made for men who had penile numbness and are incredibly successful. The reason why they're successful, they have a gap in the middle. So if you have the position of the saddle in the right place and the gap is there, the pressure is relieved on the base of the penis and you don't get it. It's a really easy one-stop solution and will solve a lot of men's issues very quickly. A lot of women will try a gap saddle, and if they're lucky enough that they're very much more varied genitalia presentation, remember women go from a scale right over here to over here, much more varied than men, hence why women's saddle issues are more prevalent than men's. They might find a gap saddle will work, but it can be a real hit and miss trial because you've got to find one that kind of suits you. What I generally find is that a more conforming saddle like this one here with sort of state-of-the-art materials that basically will give and reform and mold to what your anatomy is down there will provide a much more effective cause of relief of that genitalia numbness. So definitely more in men than women, but women suffer it more. For men, the solution is nearly always quite straightforward in that once you've established that the saddle's not in the wrong position, a gap saddle can relieve it. My take-home message from this though is that, because I have seen people who have gone and done very long events, don't understand that penile numbness is not a normal thing to have. If it's staying numb, do something about it. The issues there is that can turn into, so that neuropraxia turns into, instead of a temporary thing, turns into a permanent thing. So that can have sexual health consequences. So the ability to form an erection, there are other structures that are close to those things, like your urethra, which is basically so you can start to end up with incontinence, or that can be both going too much and going too little. So if you got that much pressure to cause permanent numbness, then that pressure can cause damage to other tissues as well. But yeah, it's mainly that neuropraxia can, just the same as riding with fully numb hands, once it stays numb for a long period of time, it can take an equally long period of time to come back if it does come back. So there are extreme cases where it can be permanent damage. My threshold is crossed for doing something when you say, I'm still numb hours after I get off the bike, or the next day. That is not a good place to be, and I think you need to do something about it. I always say with this one right here, you could just try a gap saddle and everything like that, but sometimes it can be a bit more complicated than that. So for example, you might be, your position might be really extreme for what you're trying to achieve. So if you're in a really, really aggressive position, but doing really long miles, then you'll be rotated forward on the saddle. So you might still get numbness even with a cutout saddle. So at that point, you might need to bring it into that. That's why bike fit can help when it gets quite multifactorial, Try and put a process of elimination to place. As we always say, don't just do a scattergun thing and buy loads of different saddles, just keep putting them on. Number one, is the saddle I got in the right place? Yes. I'm still getting numbness. Right, is it the right saddle for me? Do I need something that will relieve the pressure? Okay, try it, put it in the same position. If your numbness goes away, happy days. If it doesn't, that's when you might need to reach out for a bike fitter or somebody who's got a joined up medical way of working through in a clinically reasoned way. Okay, we've done that, what's next,
And do women have the same nerve?
Not that there is a nerve, that pudendal nerve, but it's more, the anatomy of it is slightly different because of the external anatomy of the woman. So, but they can get numbness still. Women sometimes get numbness though because they can get what we call a vascular occlusion. So if the woman's external genitalia all come together and then squeeze into a gap saddle, that can get ischemia, what we call that. So that's when, you know, if you fall asleep on your arm and or your arm goes tingly because the blood supply's gone. So they can get that down there, so that's where gap saddles might not be the solution for them, because they actually make it even worse because they can sort of stranglehold their external genitalia. So it's generally less in women because they haven't got the penis and the base of the nerve there so exposed, but they can still get it. Stop manhandling Harold.
Have you got a name for it?
It's Harold.
Oh. Can't walk very straight.